Who is piloting the UAPs or UFOs constantly seen in our skies? Where are they from? Why are they here? How long have they been here? What is their mission on planet Earth? Do they come in peace, or do they have more sinister motives? Join Mad Mark as he uncovers the answers to these questions and many more of the mysteries that puzzle us all on Who Are the Aliens? The history of the Anunnaki on planet Earth. And now, here's Mad Mark. Today's episode, Enki speaks of the beginning times, the diminishing atmosphere on Nibberu, and the first Anunnaki to set foot on planet Earth. Hello everyone, and welcome to Who Are the Aliens? The history of the Anunnaki on planet Earth. I'm Mad Mark, and before I begin, just a quick reminder to please like, share, and comment. It helps so much. Today we continue our studies of Zecharia Sitchin's 9th book, The Lost Book of Enki, published by Simon & Schuster in 2001. Now, on the last episode, I was not real happy with the voice that I used to depict Enki. It sounded too much like my normal speaking voice. There wasn't much of a distinction there. So today I'm going to try a new voice for him, something a bit more powerful, something that sounds a bit more like I would imagine that a god would sound. So leave me a comment and let me know what you think of this voice. I would appreciate it. Okay, so now to continue on, as Enki describes the prior times and the olden times. Before the prior times was the beginning. After the prior times were the olden times. In the olden times, the gods came to earth and created the earthlings. In the prior times, none of the gods were on the earth, nor had the earthlings yet been fashioned. In the prior times, the abode of the gods was on their own planet. Nibberu was its name. A great planet, reddish in radiance. Around the sun, an elongated circuit does it make. For a time in the cold, Nibberu is engulfed. For part of its circuit, by the sun strongly, it is heated. A thick atmosphere Nibberu envelops. By volcanic eruptions, it is constantly fed. All manner of life is sustained by this atmosphere. Without it, everything would perish. In the cold periods, the inner heat of Nibberu it keeps about the planet, like a warm coat that is constantly renewed. And in the hot period, it shields Nibberu from the sun's scorching rays. In its mist, rains it holds and releases, feeding many lakes and streams. Nibberu's lush vegetation this atmosphere does protect, and all manner of life on land and in the water have sprouted because of it. After eons of time, our species sprouted and thrived. As our numbers grew, we spread to many regions of the planet. Some tilled the land, and others were shepherds. Some lived in the mountains, and some in the valleys. But over time, rivalries occurred, encroachments happened, clashes occurred, and sticks became weapons. Clans became tribes, and eventually two great nations were created. But then, the nation of the North took up arms against the nation of the South. As time passed and technology increased, the weapons of sticks and stones became weapons of thunder, brilliance, and terror. A long, fierce war engulfed the planet, and there was for much destruction to both North and South. For many shars there was desolation in the lands, and life was diminished. But at long last a truce was declared, and peacemaking was conducted. In the end, the nations became united, and it was agreed to have one king of Nibberu to rule over all. Let there be one throne on Nibberu, one king to reign over all. Let a leader from north or from south be chosen by lot to be the supreme king. If he be from the north, let the south choose a female to be his wife and reign beside him. If from the south he be, let the north choose a female to be his spouse. Let them be the king and queen of Nibberu and unite the planet. Let their firstborn son be the successor to the throne, thus forming a unified dynasty to forever rule the planet. Thus peace began, with North and South united by marriage, and an unbroken line of kingship was established. The first king came from the north. A mighty warrior and commander was he. By lots he was chosen, and his decrees were accepted by all. The royal city was named Agad, which means unity. This first king was granted a royal title, and his name, the Celestial One, was its meaning. Order in the lands was re-established by the laws and decrees of the king. In the royal annals it is written, the lands were unified and peace was restored. The damage to the lands was repaired and food was provided for the people. And there was abundance in the lands. The queen, chosen from the south, was Antu. 3 sons she bore to King An. The eldest, and thus the heir to the throne, was named Enki. As time passed, the successive kings came and went. New customs were decreed. One of these decrees concerned the lack of males on Nibberu as a result of the Great War. Females greatly outnumbered males, and thus it was decreed that males may have more than one sexual partner. But this only led to confusion regarding the successor to the royal throne. What if the firstborn son was not birthed by the queen, but instead by a concubine, and the second-born son was birthed by the queen? Which son would be the successor to the royal throne? And thus the law of the seed was proclaimed, that the first son birthed by the queen would always take precedence over any sons born by concubines before him. Many years later, during the reign of King Anshar, the yields in the fields began to diminish. What once had been abundant was no more. With each passing Shar nearing the sun, the heat grew stronger, and in the areas far away from the sun, the cold became bitter. In the royal city of Agad, the king assembled Nibberu's greatest scientists. They examined the soil and tested the waters. Their final conclusion, a breach in the atmosphere. Then Nibberu's great volcanoes began to erupt less frequently, and the air became thinner and thinner as the protective shield eroded more and more. It was during these days that King Enshar ascended to the throne. A man of great understanding and knowledge was he. As Nibberu progressed inward towards the sun, King Enshar studied the atmospheres of each planet as they passed by. But with each passing Shar, Nibberu's atmosphere degraded more and more. In council, the great scientists debated ways to bandage their eroding atmosphere. A new shield to embrace the planet was attempted, but everything that was thrust up simply fell back down. Since Nibberu's atmosphere had been created by them, the volcanoes were studied. What could be done to increase their eruptions? But no answers ever came. And thus, during the reign of Enshar, the breach in the skies grew larger. Rains were withheld, winds blew harder, and water sources began drying up. And the suffering continued. The fields forgot their abundance. Even the people were becoming less fertile. In the palace, neither sons nor daughters were born. It was during that time that the 8th king of Nibberu, Lama, ascended to the throne. And that was when the scientists announced their final 2 plans to solve the problem. One was to use gold, which was rare on Nibberu, but plentiful in the asteroid belt. It was the only substance that to the finest powder could be ground, then lofted high to the heavens, where suspended it could remain. Thus, with replenishments, it would heal the breach and save the planet's ailing atmosphere. But a fleet of celestial ships would be needed to bring the gold to Nibberu. The other suggestion was to create great weapons of terror, missiles that can shake the ground loose and split the mountains asunder. Such missiles could be launched into the volcanoes, their dormancy to bestir, their eruptions to increase. The atmosphere would increase and the breach would disappear. But King Llama had become too feeble to choose between these two solutions. Time continued to pass. 1 shar, 2 shars, 3 shars, 4 shars. In the land, strife was abundant, but food and water were not abundant. The people were in despair, but the king paid no attention. In the royal court, the princes were astir, and the accusations were directed towards the king. From the olden storehouses, weapons were retrieved, and talk of rebellion was heard. A prince in the royal palace was the first to take up arms. By words of promise, the other princes he did agitate. Alleu was his name. "Let Llama be king no more," he shouted. "Let decision supplant hesitation. Come, let us remove the king and force him to abandon the throne." The princes to his words gave heed, and to the gates of the palace they rushed. They stormed the throne room, but the king escaped to the palace tower. But Alleu chased him down and killed him. "King Llama is no more," Alleu shouted joyfully. He then rushed to the throne and seated himself on it, declaring himself the new king. Now this is the account of the kingship of Alleu and of the Anunnaki coming to Earth. After the assassination of King Llama, unity in the land was lost. The people were grieving, and questions were being asked. Who was Alleu? Was he the legal heir? Was he the firstborn? By what right has he usurped the throne? Had he not just murdered King Llama? Alleu was brought before the 7 who judge. After hearing all of the arguments from everyone concerned, and just as the council was about to award Alleu the kingship, a new candidate emerged. His name was Anu, and he claimed that after my forefather An am I named. Let Anu be king, many counselors shouted. Let Alleu be removed. They called in Alleu, the discovered findings to be told. To the prince Anu, Alleu his arm in embrace offered, and he said, "Though by different offsprings of one ancestor are we both descended, let us live in peace together, Nibberu to abundance return. Let me keep the throne, let you keep the succession." He turned to face the council. "Let Anu the crown prince be, let him be my successor." Anu bowed before the council, and to the assembly he declared, "Alleu's cupbearer I shall be, his successor in waiting." And that became the council's decision. In the royal annals it was inscribed. Once having been granted kingship, Alleu immediately set to work to solve the atmospheric problems on Nibberu. "Let celestial craft be constructed," he exclaimed, "to seek the gold from the asteroid belt." But alas, by the asteroid belt the ships were crushed. None of them returned. "Let the weapons of terror, the bowels of Nibberu, be cut open," King Alleu then demanded. "Let the volcanoes again erupt." Skyborne chariots were armed. The terror missiles from the skies were the volcanoes struck. The mountains swayed and the valleys shuddered as the great brilliances with thunder exploded. In the land there was much rejoicing. Of abundance there were great expectations. But alas, this plan failed as well. The volcanic eruptions did not increase, and the breach in the atmosphere did remain. And as the shars passed, the conditions on Nibberu grew even worse. The people of Nibberu ceased to revere their king. Instead of relief, more misery he has caused, they shouted. But Alleu remained on the throne. For 9 shars, Alleu was king on Nibberu. But in the 9th shar, Anu gave battle to King Alleu. To hand-to-hand combat with naked bodies, Alleu he challenged. Let the winner be king, Anu said. They grappled with each other in the public square. Doorposts trembled and walls shook. Eventually, Alleu bent his knee. To the ground, he fell on his chest. Alleu had been defeated. By acclaim, Anu was hailed as the new king. Anu was escorted to the palace, and Alleu fled from the crowd, afraid of facing the same fate as he himself had brought to King Lama. And unbeknownst to anyone, to the place of the celestial chariots he hurriedly went. Into a chariot Alleu climbed, closing the hatch behind him. He climbed into the cockpit and fired up the engines. The sound was like music to his ears, and thusly did Alleu escape Nibberu. To the snow-hued earth did he set his course. This destination was not picked by chance. He had remembered as a secret from the tales of the beginning times, from the time of the creation of the solar system, and he was playing a hunch. So, to the forbidden earth he set his course, to the planet where no one had gone before, because no one had ever attempted to traverse the dangerous asteroid belt, inside of which the inner planets and the Earth resided. Could there be gold on planet Earth? The gold needed to save Nibberu. And would the people of Nibberu welcome him back with open arms of gratitude should he make this discovery? If he stayed on Nibberu, he would most certainly be exiled, possibly even killed. But although this journey would be fraught with peril, if he discovered gold on Earth, he would return to Nibberu a hero. Riding like an eagle, Alleu scanned the heavens. Nibberu looked as if it were a ball hanging in an endless void. Alluring was its features. Its radiance emblazoned the heavens. But as he stared at it, the breach in the atmosphere was obvious, like a darkened wound. For a moment, remorse grasped the heart of Alleu. Fear crept in. Could he really survive passing through the asteroid belt? Could he do what nobody had ever been able to do before? For a moment, he thought of turning back, but then his determination returned, and onward he went. Eventually, he passed Jupiter, and the treacherous asteroid belt lay dead ahead. Of rocks and boulders was it hammered together. Like orphans with no mother, they banded together. He thought again of the many Niberian chariots that had fallen prey to these rocks, but Nibberu's survival depended on the gold that he felt certain lie ahead of him on planet Earth. Nothing would stop him, and then it was upon him. The ominous boulders against his ship charged forward, like an enemy attacking in battle. Toward them, Alleu, a death-dealing missile from the chariot, let loose. Then another. Against these enemies, the terror weapons he thrust. As if becoming frightened warriors, the boulders turned back, granting a path to Alleu. As if under a spell, the asteroid belt opened a doorway to the king. He had not been defeated, and his mission had not ended. He caught a glimpse of Mars as he passed by, and then, suddenly, the 7th planet, Earth, lie ahead. Toward the planet, Alleu set his course, to a destination most inviting. Smaller than Nibberu it was, its atmosphere thinner. Clouds were swirling within it. He saw that the Earth was divided into 3 regions, snow-covered at the top and the bottom, with blue and brown in between. Deftly, Alleu spread his chariot's arresting wings around the Earth to encircle. In the middle region, dry lands and watery oceans he observed. He scanned the Earth below with the ship's analyzing radiation beam. I have attained it, he shouted with excitement. Gold, much gold, the beam was indicating. It was beneath the dark-hued region. In the waters it was also. With his heart pounding inside his chest, Alleu had a decision to make. Shall he bring his ship down on dry land, risking a crash and possible death? Or shall he attempt to land in the water and possibly sink into oblivion? In the pilot's seat, he did not stir. Into fate's hands, the chariot he entrusted. Now, fully engulfed in Earth's atmosphere, his ship was moving faster and faster. Its spread wings became aglow. Earth's atmosphere was like an oven. Suddenly, the craft shook violently, emitting a mortifying thunder. Abruptly, the ship crashed, with a suddenness altogether stopping. Knocked senseless and stunned by the crash, Alleu did not move. And then he opened his eyes and knew that he was among the living. At the planet of gold, he had victoriously arrived. At this point in Mr. Sitchin's book, Enki goes into great detail regarding the beginning of our solar system and the creation of Earth. Now, since I covered all of this in great detail in episode 3, I'm going to skip ahead now. If you're interested in all of that, as I said, please go back and watch episode 3, now called episode 3 Redux. I now once again turn the microphone over to Enki. Now this is the account of how the olden times began, and the era that in the annals of the Golden Era by name was known, and how from Nibberu to Earth the missions went to obtain the gold. The escape of Alleu from Nibberu was its beginning. The gold, found in the asteroid belt, was the confirmation. It indicated that gold could also be found on Tiamat/Earth, since according to the creation story, both the asteroid belt and Earth were created from the destruction of the planet Tiamat. Once he had landed upon the Earth, Alleu the ship's hatch did open. Dark-hued was the ground, and blue-white were the skies. There was no sound, and no one to bid him welcome. Alone, on the alien planet, he stood. He lowered himself to the ground. Onto the dark-hued soil did he step. There were hills in the distance, and much vegetation all around. Ahead of him were the marshlands, and into the marsh he did step. He shuddered from the water's coolness. He soon returned to his ship with food and water to sustain him. And then he slept, a powerful slumber. He had no idea how long he had slept, but he was startled awake by an unfamiliar brilliance, something never seen before on Nibberu. The brightness outside was blinding. The rays of the sun were overpowering. Grabbing a mask to protect his eyes from the sun, he again left the ship. He headed for a nearby forest and discovered a pond. He sampled the water and found it good for drinking. He noticed several fruit trees nearby. Out of curiosity, he picked up a pebble and tossed it into the pond. Fish jumped when the stone hit the water. Alleu laughed. The air was good. The water was drinkable. There was fruit, and there were fish. He bent down for another drink of water from the pond and was startled suddenly by a hissing sound. A slithering body in the water was moving. He raised his weapon and shot a ray towards that sound. The movement stopped. The hissing ended. The slithering body lay still. Dead was the creature, a sight most strange. Like a rope its long body was, with no hands or feet. Fierce eyes pierced from its small head, and a long tongue protruded from its mouth. This was truly a creature from another world, something never before seen on Nibberu. Alleu collected more water from the pond and fruits from the trees and made his way back to the ship. He noticed that the sun's rays had greatly diminished. Darkness was impending. Had he been gone that long? The shortness of a day on earth amazed him. Again he slept, and at sunrise he returned to the marshes. Into the deeper waters he waded. A tester into the water he inserted to probe for the precious gold needed to save Nibberu. If the creation story he had been taught was true, if both the Earth and the asteroid belt were the result of the destruction of Tiamat, and there was gold discovered in the asteroid belt, then there must be gold on Earth as well. By symbols and numbers, the tester disclosed its findings. Alleu's heart stopped. The test was positive. There was gold on planet Earth. Unsteady on his legs, Alleu stepped forward. Deeper into the marsh he went. Again he inserted the tester into the water, and again the same result: gold. A cry of great triumph escaped Alleu's throat. Nibberu's fate was now in his hands. Hurriedly he moved back to the ship. He grabbed the ship's radio and fired up the mic. These words from the great Alleu to Anu on Nibberu are directed. These words from the great Alleu to Anu on Nibberu are directed. On another world I am, and the gold of salvation I have found. But I have demands that must be met before I will reveal any more information. Those were the words of Alleu. From the dark-hued earth to Nibberu they were by the speaker beamed. When the words of Alleu to Anu were conveyed, the king was astounded. Amazed were the counselors and the sages. Alleu is not dead, they pondered. Could indeed he be living on another world? Let the words of acknowledgement to Alleu be sent, the assembly cried. At the place of the celestial chariots, the command was given. To Alleu, these words were spoken. Anu, the king, to you his greeting sends. Of your well-being to learn, he is pleased. For your departing from Nibberu, there was no need. Enmity is not in Anu's heart. If gold for salvation you have indeed discovered, then let Nibberu be saved. As soon as Anu's words reached Earth, Alleu quickly responded. If your savior I am to be, your lives to save, convene the princes to assembly. My ancestry must be declared supreme. Let the commanders make me their leader and bow to my commands. Let the council pronounce me king to replace Anu on the throne. When Alleu's words reached Nibberu, there was great consternation. How could Anu be deposed as king? What if Alleu is lying? Where is this planet he claims to be on? And did he indeed find gold there? The great sages were summoned, and the oldest of them spoke. I was Alleu's master. He holds great knowledge of the beginning times and of the celestial battle with Tiamat. If indeed beyond the asteroid belt he has journeyed, then Earth, the seventh planet, is indeed his asylum. And that is where I will leave you for this episode. You have quite a lot to digest there, and we have so much more to cover and learn. I'm Mad Mark, and I sincerely hope that you have enjoyed this episode. Please like, share, and comment. It helps so much. And please tell your friends and help spread the word about this show. If you have any questions regarding the content discussed on this program, just message me through madmarktv.com or on any of my social media platforms. Lastly, I would just like to remind everyone that listening to this program is no excuse to not read the book that we have been discussing here, The Lost Book of Enki by Zecharia Sitchin. It is an amazing work, and I am leaving out much of the information in order to keep the show moving properly, so do yourselves a favor and read that book. Who Are the Aliens? The History of the Anunnaki on Planet Earth is written and produced by me, Mad Mark. Today we have taken another step in our ongoing journey to discover the truth. I promise you, that things will get more and more interesting the further we delve into this topic of who are the aliens, the history of the Anunnaki on planet Earth. Bye for now. You've been listening to Who Are the Aliens? The History of the Anunnaki on Planet Earth with your host, Mad Mark. Join us again on our next program when Mad Mark will once again uncover the answers to the mysteries that puzzle mankind.